Thomas. I'm the course leader for advertising design at USW, and this is our advertising design creative workshop. So it's a nice little workshop we do with a lot of FE students from sixth form and BTEC programs, and also something we do on our open days and various masterclasses throughout the academic year. Also, we sometimes do it with our students as part of the induction program. So what we're going to do today is look at a storyboard, or how we put together a storyboard on our course. Very often when students have a live brief on a campaign prior to doing the actual filming or any kind of artwork or any kind of creative strategy, we get them to do a storyboard once they do their research, once they define their target audience, etc., etc. So there's just this kind of like easy steps of how we do a storyboard on the course. Here's a nice example of a storyboard. This is Gareth, one of our grads. Gareth now works at Southampton Football Club as a digital designer. So this is created when he was in the third year, and this little brief we did, a little collaboration project between the NHS and Deliveroo. So for this particular storyboard, he actually photographed, or he got somebody to photograph himself. So then obviously you got a composition and scale, etc. And then he's traced over it in Adobe Illustrator to get a really nice art style of the narrative. However, very often, because our course is very much ideas driven, strategy driven, quick ideas, quick thinking, critical thinking, students knock up storyboards in a matter of minutes, maybe to pitch ideas to clients, pitch ideas to the staff, or maybe their classmates. So most storyboards don't have to normally end up the kind of this quality, but this is a nice example of good practice from one of our recent grads. So a storyboard is obviously a kind of precursor to any motion ad. So a motion ad you would see maybe on social media or in the cinema or television, before that is made, and there's production and editing, etc., etc. People put together a storyboard to break down the sections. And that's what we're going to do today. So first of all, I think something worth bearing in mind is how difficult these days television advertising is compared to maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago. Obviously, those times when I was growing up as a child, a teenager, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have apps, you didn't have complicated game devices, etc., etc. You didn't have Sky TV, iPlayer, all these demand servers. So basically, when you were watching television and you had a 15-minute commercial break, unless you got up and put the kettle on, you were a captive audience, very much as it still is in the cinema. But obviously now, a lot of people watch things on their mobile devices, through their gaming devices, on tablets, obviously YouTube, etc., etc. So as an advertising point of view and as a brand point of view, it's very hard these days to get into people's living room, because, as I said, a lot of the television they watch is pre-recorded or on demand, etc. So they're not sitting through that commercial break where they're watching a series of adverts. So therefore, the adverts which are on TV, obviously they have to have more of an impact, because there's far less of a captive audience, or far less people actually viewing them because of all these other platforms, or the platforms which obviously now can be controlled by the viewer to skip the ads. So this time of year, the John Lewis advert comes out. It came out last week. Obviously, that's an iconic ad. These days, with the Sainsbury's advert and the Aldi's adverts and the Marks Spencer's adverts, etc., etc. I think JD Sports and Sports Directive seem to join that kind of this Christmas. Up until a few years ago, the John Lewis Christmas ad was created by two of our grads from our course, who then went to work for Adam and Eve, a creative agency. So we always look out for the John Lewis ad, because obviously we've got a connection between our course. So that would come on TV, it would be played, and then throughout up to Christmas, you would obviously have the merchandise, you would have in-store displays, you would have various social media things, and obviously it creates a buzz on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc., etc. So obviously it's very well planned and orchestrated. So for this little workshop, we're going to just look at traditional television advert. As I said, when those big adverts come out, very often they're 90 seconds. So the first question really is, how long is a traditional TV ad? The traditional TV ad is a 30-second slot. So that's something you need to bear in mind for your workshop today. Second thing is, what makes a good TV ad? So I've just broken this down into 5 little points. Point 1 is represent your brand clearly. So if you're spending millions of pounds on an ad campaign, regardless of the narrative or the characters or the humor or the visual effects or the celebrity endorsement, it's obvious then that people need to know what brand you're advertising. So if it's a brand new trainer, a soft drink, an alcoholic drink, a pizza, wherever it is, you need visual and verbal clues throughout the advert to tell you what it is. Don't just leave it to the last minute and then, oh, it's for the so and so and so and so. So we need product placement. It may be visual. Certain adverts may be something like Calvin Klein, Armani, Gucci. We know the luxury or the black and white when it's filmed, so you get to recognize the kind of tone of voice and the brand values. So we need that subtle narrative throughout, so we know the advert is for that particular brand. But obviously do it tastefully. Number 2 is to create a storyline. So an advert is storytelling, isn't it? So really, you need to tell that story. Bear in mind, in this context, we only have 30 seconds to tell that story. So we need to engage people in the first few seconds, then tell the story, but at all times subtly promoting the ad campaign, whether it's for a brand or a product or a charity, etc. And then, we need to connect and relate to that target audience. Obviously, it varies on humor. If there are certain charity adverts, obviously they're playing on emotion. If it's a very throwaway humorous product, something like a Lynx, obviously then there's a different tone of voice. But at the end of the day, we've got 30 seconds to tell that story. The third thing is, it may be relevant and maybe not, is develop a signature or a theme, as I said. So it may be black and white photography, very a very arty kind of tastefully shot, as again like a Calvin Klein, Dolce & Gabbana, a kind of luxury high-end perfume brand, or an expensive car or watch. You kind of recognize their art style, or think back to kind of 80s Ronald McDonald. Obviously in recent times we've had the Go Compare guy, we've had the Meerkats, etc. So people then associate and it becomes synonymous with, again, going back to the John Lewis advert, you then see merchandise, people buy the toys, window display. So maybe if it's relevant, have a signature or a character. It may be a celebrity, so maybe that celebrity appears in those, for example, Johnny Depp or Brad Pitt. Very often you see those people in fragrance adverts, and that they are the brand ambassadors. Scarlett Johansson, Charlize Theron, they are the kind of face of that brand. So then, therefore, in the first 2 or 3 seconds, the brand because they are the brand ambassadors. So if it's relevant, again, that could be it could be like a blue light, or it could be a red light, or it could be a certain style. It could be animated, illustrative, but you recognize the theme or characters of that advert or that brand. Fourth thing is keep it simple. So that's a KISS strategy, as we say. So as I said, you've only got 30 seconds. So you need opening shot. So you establish the scenario. Then obviously the advert plays out, whether it's serious, humorous, emotional, etc., etc. And then obviously to wrap it up, we have what they call the call to action at the end. So we need to know then what the brand is for, where can we buy this from, etc., etc. And number 5, less relevant in this, but relevant, I suppose, to production stage. So at the moment, our third year students do a module called Advertising Collaboration, and they collaborate with each other and actual brands. So when they produce, and obviously it's the light and effects, it's the editing, it's the audio, it's all the post-production and after effects you apply. Again, if you can do this on a large scale budget, you would have hairstylists, makeup artists, lighting crews, maybe drone photography, all these people involved to produce this high-end advert. Again, think of the Christmas Lewis from John Lewis. But this is something we instill in our students really across the course. But think about the production, again, on our course, you can book out green screens, photographic studios. You can use all the media loans equipment. So, but in this case, because we're doing a storyboard, it's not irrelevant. But obviously, you can comment on how you would see lighting, angles, production, visual effects, etc., etc. And then just to summarize it, to break it down, as I said, you've only got 30 seconds. So set the scene. So the first few seconds, you see the impact. Second thing to remember is to tell the story. So as I said, so it needs to be synonymous with that brand. Going back to the John Lewis ad, very often you see a 90-second edit, then a 60-second, and then a 30-second, and being reached 15. And so once it becomes synonymous on TV for a few weeks, people get a bit bored of it, and then obviously they can cut it down. And then this is then the platforms like Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, etc. Because then once you can just have little pre-rolls on YouTube. So yeah, I get that advert, and then this reinforcing it. And then the last thing, as I said, is then the product placement. Maybe it could be the logo, Apple, Nike, Google. You see the logo. It may have its slogan, which again reinforces the brand. Again, that could follow up maybe on social media. A hashtag, maybe very often campaigns obviously have a hashtag, because again, this TV advert could be obviously in the TV, it could be in the cinema, and then integrate across various platforms like print, like out of home, like social media platforms, and then a call to action. So a call to action then is, where do we buy this from? So again, if it's Apple or Nike or Coca-Cola, everybody knows where to buy these products from. It may be exclusive to a certain supermarket, exclusive to a certain store, only available online. So if it's a bit more independent, lower budget, or a new product or a new flavor, we may need to be told where we can purchase this product from, or where we can look into it. So obviously to get interest from the viewing public. So that's the kind of breakdown of 30 seconds. And then here's a few things which you kind of elements really, which you may want to embed into your show reel. So obviously the product, as we said, there may be people, animals, celebrities. What's the audio? So is it raining? Is it in a cafe? Is it in a coffee shop? Is it at home? Is it in school? What is the environment? What's the narrative? Obviously, what story? Is it routine? Certain brands like McDonald's are very, very clever at this, where people are going for morning coffee, or people dropping their children off at the school run, or a reward. Somebody's had a hard day at work and they pop in for a Big Mac and it's cold and sweat. They're very good at that. Again, humor, again, depending on what you do. Emotion, it could be involved in, a very serious, heart-rendering charity ad. Seasonal, so obviously we've got Christmas coming up. It could be Halloween, Valentine's Day, summer festivals. Lighting, again, you can make some notes on that. Camera angles, it could be a pan to the face, it could be a wide shot, it could be a rule of thirds. Again, visual effects, do you have animation or amazing kind of pyrotechnics or added effects in post-production? Location, so think of setting the scene. Call to action we've touched on, and obviously the branding. So the last shot is showing the product or showing the logo. So then again, it's going into our brains what we are viewing overall. So there's some elements which you may want to consider. They're not relevant to all of them, but you may want to consider these when you're putting together your storyboard. And the last couple of slides. So this is the template. So what you can do, this is what we use with our students, or maybe, as I said, on our open days. So 6 slides. So in this case, each slide represents 5 seconds. So obviously that's your opening shot. There's your story. And then at the end, you would probably have the hashtag, the call to action, the product, etc., etc. So there's your start, there's your middle, and obviously there's your end. And then it really can look like this. As I said, this course is not about being able to draw. So it's what we call scamps in advertising. It's literally putting down stick man on paper and then using these lines underneath to describe the shots, the angles, the lighting, all the elements we've spoke about already. So what we'd like you to do is to work on this, pick a brand, pick a charity, anything of your choice, and then you can submit it to me and I'll give you some feedback. So as I said, you can download a storyboard template, or you could draw it yourself. You could work on a tablet. You could print out the paper or draw the paper and then scan it in or photograph with your phone. Save it as maybe a PDF or a JPEG and then submit it, and I can give you some feedback on the work. So a couple more slides. If you want more information about the course, please follow us on Instagram at usw.advertising. It's an amazing Instagram feed. We've got student testimonials, graduate testimonials, industry people, some amazing examples of motion ad, print ads, social media ads, etc. on the course. So please follow us on Instagram at usw.advertising. And then finally, thanks for your time today. And then, as I mentioned, if you want to send me your storyboards, save them as a JPEG or a PDF, and then email to myself and I'll give you some feedback. So it can be any brand, any charity, any campaign. Just do a 6-slide storyboard, roughly 30 seconds, and then submit it to me and I'll give you some feedback. Thanks for your time, guys.